call this meeting of the Clackamas County Commission to order and invite you to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a relatively light agenda today. And the first item, since we have no discussion items today, is citizen communication. And the first card I have is Kevin Johnson.
Good morning. Here are the questions I asked a month ago. Will the Oak Grove Library close if Gladstone does not build their proposed new library? Why was Happy Valley given a building from the county remodeled by the county at no cost to the taxpayers of Happy Valley? Will the Happy Valley Library stay open and operated by the county if the city doesn't take over operation? And will that library get another $1 million? Some other items requested were regarding Measure 3-10 from November 2008, details of direct mailings and details of public presentations. 2 weeks ago, I asked if Gladstone does build a new library, and after the loan is paid off, what happens to the surplus money from the library district funding? Will Gladstone be allowed to keep the extra money above the operating cost? Will they get to up their operating costs so there is no surplus, or will the county keep the surplus? I got your library district fact sheet, or should I say BS sheet. If that was your best effort to answer my concerns, it was pathetic. Since it only partially answered one of my questions, it was mostly worthless. How stupid do you think we are? Maybe you think if you say anything, we would just go away. Ask the city council of Gladstone how that's worked for them. That's what they thought too. So let's try again. I will now give you an official public records request regarding these concerns. As stated on the request form, if the material benefits the general public, there is no charge. We already know the information submitted and published in the voter's pamphlet was a lie. The public deserves to know the rest of your misdeeds regarding this measure and related items. I expect no charges since the answers to these questions will benefit the public. Just knowing how you operate will be beneficial. One more question, be an easy one. You should be able to answer right now. Excluding the $1 million the city of Gladstone got from the county general fund, and excluding the extra $1.5 million they got if they would go along with your scheme to close the Oak Grove Library, did the passage of Measure 3-10 in November of '08 authorize or pay for any capital costs for Gladstone to build a new library?
Okay. Thank you.
No.
I have one other person here who wanted to speak about the Gladstone
you
Library.
can't answer that simple question?
If you let me finish here, I have one other person here to ask, who wants to speak to the Gladstone Library issue, and then I will refer your questions and any of their concerns to the county administrator. So might as well get the second library person up at the same time. That's why I was just going through the cards. And that is Mariana Moore.
Yes, I'm Mariana Moore. I've been here before from Gladstone. When I first started coming here and asking you questions, it was almost as if you didn't know that you were in charge of the libraries in Gladstone. And so a lot of things have been said that I feel are blatantly untrue. And people in our district continually say, well, we voted on the library. We did not vote on the library. You weren't on the council at that time, but I think you were probably all residents of Clackamas County, and you should have known what was in it. So what I'm giving you today is the ballot title and what was in the the voters pamphlet. And if you look at this, it says it was to establish a county-wide library service district, a library service district to provide permit and dedicated library funding, to allow libraries to make basic repairs and library improvements, to restore all libraries' ability in the district, to purchase more books and materials, and to prevent reductions in services and closure of some city libraries. That's what people voted on. And if you'll notice at the bottom, it says this certifies the above ballot title is true and complete. And at the end of this ballot title, it says all of the monies shall be spent on library operations and services. An annual audit is available to the public. Now, this was in 2008. Where are these annual audits? I'd like to see a copy of the annual audits for each of the years since then. If you continue over to the second page, it talks about general fund to supplement city libraries and provide funding for county operations of 3 libraries serving unincorporated residents. Nowhere in any of this tells us what those libraries are. If you go to the Oak Grove Library, that's what it says on it. It doesn't say this is a Clackamas County library. People thought that was their library. There was nothing in this ballot that told them you were going to close it. At the bottom of this second page, it says you can no longer provide supplemental funding for the city libraries or operate the 3 existing county libraries. And barring new funding, the 3 county libraries will close. Never says it's Oak Grove. It doesn't cite who they are at all. On the second page, it says funding sources for library services, exclusively fund library services. Dedicated funding would allow the libraries in Clackamas County to stay open and continue their programs. And the district would be governed by the Board of County Commissioners. It repeats that an audit is to be made. I notice that I also see when you weren't all on this, but all but one of you was last spring when you voted to allow Gladstone to build their library. And so I see the governmental agreement.
You need to kind of wrap up here.
Okay, I will. I have the agenda from that day. It says business and community service that you approved. Approval of a cooperative intergovernmental agreement between Clackamas County and the city of Gladstone for capital contribution for library services. This has been hidden all along, and now here we are with this $10 million library that doesn't appear to have had any vote of the people, and that's what we want, is a chance to vote.
Oh, okay. Did you have a question, or?
Well, I just maybe,
That's what I was going to,
yeah, why don't you do that first
Turn
before I
it to-
respond?
Were you
The
going
ca-
to answer some of the questions from Mr. Johnson and myself?
that's what I'm trying to get to the county administrator who has,
I sense that it's kind of pointing my way, yes. A couple
Last-
things.
moving towards.
Last week I asked for it, and you handed me this fact sheet that's totally unfactual.
Well, I would respectfully disagree with that, it's totally unfactual, but
Well, certainly
Be that
that's
as
what
it
we
may.
voted on.
Okay, you can sit down and we'll hear from the county administrator on this. Try to be responsive.
3 basic points. First, as I said last week, there was a long run-up to the November 2008 vote. There were many public meetings, many public discussions. I wasn't personally involved in them, but I know people who were, and I've talked with them. It was very clear through those discussions that the county was getting out of the retail operation of library businesses, and I confirmed that with our director yesterday. But I think we have a couple good things here today. First of all, we do have the public records request from Mr. Johnson. That's good, that's tangible, we have that. We'll start working to respond specifically to what's in this. And I understand from Ms. Moore's comments, she would like to see the audits. We can get those out, and we can make those happen as well. And I think eventually, probably the best thing that can happen is rather than continue this debate at this meeting, we should find a time after we get the materials together to sit down with them and explain just how the process went and what's going forward with it. That would probably be more productive than
Right.
trying to debate this out here.
Okay. A question?
Oh, well, I have a couple comments, and that is, number one, I have been looking into this, and I have made some requests, and even a request perhaps of a potential work session. But do you recall if, since this passed, if the Board of County Commissioners actually met as the library district board?
Yeah,
Budget process.
Pardon?
In the budget process.
Well, I
Yeah.
don't mean on the budget process. I meant separate of the budget process, but met as the board to discuss any of the spending decisions or
not sure about that. I know
Or
you've
the
met as
strategy
part of
for
the
Upton
budget
County.
process. I'd have to research if we met separate from the budget process on that.
But I just want to know as far as how the monies are distributed and any kind of strategy, if there is a meeting to reference where some of these decisions were made.
I can look into that, sure. But I do know, the major way you do that is through the budget process, of course, because that's where the decisions are made.
With regards to the Tualatin issue, didn't we meet as a board then?
Right, both
Because Tualatin
entered late.
entered late and
And-
had a subsequent vote to enter the
Right.
district.
Good point. And same with Damascus,
And, because didn't we have to
approve that.
approve that going to
Right,
the ballot?
Right.
Well, there were two other meetings.
Yeah.
That's right, Commissioner Savas, that happened because Tualatin, the section in Clackamas County, joined after November '08, and then later on Damascus joined as well.
Right. Well, maybe I just get a listing of all the meetings we've had and the minutes from all the meetings. I'd appreciate that.
Okay?
Chair Behan?
Yes.
Two things. I appreciate where you're going with that, Commissioner Savas, because I do think that it would be helpful if we are to sit as the Service District Board, that maybe we should pencil out, 2 meetings a year or something to not just as it pertains to the budget, but also to allow for a forum to hear for concerns or things that we can be considering as we're moving forward. So I'm wondering if, some of what we're hearing today we could have gotten earlier information about that if we had scheduled, regular meetings as a Library Service District Board. So I'd be interested in the answer to Commissioner Savas' question. The other question I have is a member of the community at the Oak Lodge Community Council meeting last week came up to me and was talking with me about the Gladstone Library issue, and she had an interesting question, which is there a statute of limitations isn't quite the right word, but is there a time limit associated with, when we give the money to a local library from the county to be able, like Gladstone, to be able to leverage that for additional funds to build a new library? Is there a time limit that we put on those funds to say, if you haven't got a new library built by this period of time, the money comes back or is available to something else? Is there a time limit associated?
I couldn't tell you precisely if there is. I would believe there would be. I don't think the money was ever intended to go into a fund and just sit,
Right.
over long term. Precisely what that limit is, I'm not sure, but, my knowledge and intuition would tell me, of course, there would be.
Yeah, well,
but
that's
couldn't
what I
tell
would
you.
think too, but that had not come up in any of our conversations, so I was just curious. And her concern was, they want their library,
Right.
and they're just worried that, continual delay and, could cause them to potentially lose that money. And so I just didn't know if
Well, I
that
think
was
we
the
do understand
case.
that Gladstone has a local process that they have to work
Right.
through, and we would be sensitive to that within reason anyway,
Okay,
but not endlessly.
yeah, thank you.
Question or not?
So one thing is that these are restricted dollars, and the $1 million, did that come out of the general fund? I mean, you don't have to answer that right now, but
We'll find
aren't
out.
those dollars after a collection from the county property tax for the library districts? Secondly, isn't there an advisory group for the library district? I'm pretty sure there is. There's an advisory group. And the other is, we're actually the board of directors for how many different groups?
Of libraries?
No, how many different boards are
Oh.
we the chair of?
Depending how you count, and it's somewhere between 50 and 70.
Okay, so The problem with having an annual meeting on all these boards is, even though they're all advisory to us, they generally do the process, and then we take, under their advice, any issues they have to address. Plus, during the budget process, those advisory groups usually appear and talk about the budget process. So if we have 50 of them, and we're going to have 2 meetings a year for every one, we might as well just move in here. So, that's why we have advisory groups. So where did the $1 million come from?
We'll find out.
And a lot of the stuff in the voters pamphlet actually came from a group, what's the group called? Like Friends of the Library group, and were submitted by that group. And some of this stuff came out of the county. But the other thing is, all these areas, including Milwaukee, Happy Valley, Damascus, they're all within Clackamas County, and they're all county libraries by the fact that they're in the county. So I think that defining specifically locations, I was mayor of Milwaukee during this process, and at first Milwaukee was not interested in becoming part of the district. Thank goodness we did. And Milwaukee will be looking at what they're going to do in the future, as will everybody else. But these are restricted dollars, and there is an audit on it. I am the chair of the audit committee, and I've seen the audit. And the audit this year, I think, is almost completed if it's not completed. So that information's available. It's a lot of fun to read.
Can I just add one thing? I understand what you're saying about us serving as the board for all these different districts. And, we have 50 business meetings a year, so to speak. And I guess it would be nice if we could program out at least on as a part of our regular agenda, not necessarily separate meetings, but so, to give some certainty to our districts that, at least once a year as a part of our regular meeting, we're going to have an opportunity to hear an update of what's going on, have people able to come and share with us concerns, maybe hear from the advisory committee. So maybe there's some way that we can build that in throughout the year. So that would be, one way to do it. I wasn't suggesting necessarily we would have 50 extra commission meetings, but just to give people some certainty so that they know that there is a regular programmed opportunity for them to come and give us an update so we know what's going on. So.
I don't know.
I actually agree. There is an opportunity to do this. There are lots of committees that none of us have attended.
Yeah.
And it'd be great if we could. But lots of them interfere with lots of other things. I've gone to a number of committees, and now I'm a co-chair of one of them. It'd be great if we could get an annual report, either written or at a work session on what some of these committees are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, there probably is very little interest in exactly the process.
Yeah. Commissioner Savas, and then the
Yeah,
administrator.
I just want to, just for people out there, there is a compelling question here, and I think that the paragraph that was in the ballot statement, the rationale for proposal, as it's titled, I think is the compelling question. I won't read all of it, but I'll read the 2 most compelling things that are in here. Clackamas County can no longer provide supplemental funding to city libraries or operate the 3 existing county libraries. The county has announced that, barring new funding, the 3 county libraries will close on June 30th, 2009, and county-provided supplemental funding to city libraries will be reduced by 20% per year for the next 5 years, ending completely in 2014. So when you read that, and then it passes, and it's got the 39 cents per thousand, one would assume that those 3 libraries, by reading that rationale, that those 3 libraries would continue to exist.
No, I'm speaking to the administrator.
Yeah, a couple helpful observations. First of all, in terms of the run-up to the ballot measure, I should also point out virtually every library had its own individual support group, advisory group, et cetera, and they were all involved and engaged in this process of district formation, talking with the localities around there, whether it was Wilsonville or Sandy or wherever. There was a lot of active engagement that way. The other thing that was just helpfully placed in front of me is something entitled Subject Library District Progress Report for 2010-2011. And it talks about the purposes and intention of the district, summary of spreadsheets of standards, and if a library has met those standards, individual library progress reports, and internal costs and allocated costs. So this is a helpful document that is already available, and we can help make that out there as
And
well.
I would remind everyone what the county has, excuse me, committed to continue is the network that distributes the system whereby you go to the library and you look for a book, and it isn't at your library, but it's at a library in a nearby, in another city. That book will appear in your library the next day or within a couple days. It will tell you anywhere in the system where any of the materials are and arrange to get them to you at your branch. That's the function that the county always served and will continue to serve. And so as a county board, that's the piece, and that's one of the things that we are sort of looking for a permanent home for that as well. For the network services, I think they're called Linus or something like that.
Library Network of Clackamas County.
Yeah, yeah. The acronym for it. So that's the main thing we offer. So to continue, I have cards here from John Ludlow. Is the next card I have up.
John Ludlow, candidate for Clackamas County Commission Chair. To reiterate what Mayor Spinett said, Mayor Steve Spinett of Damascus several meetings ago, he asked for the commission to go ahead and voluntarily put the entire question of the rail vote for the public on your own volition. Not only did that fall on deaf ears, but and it was not surprising to see that most of you wouldn't make the motion. But I think it's most disconcerting to see that not one of you made the motion. So that means your minds are already made up. I wrote a piece recently on how to vet candidates running for the commission, whether it's chair or not. And it's pretty easy out there right now. It's the Selwood Bridge vote. 63% of the public said no to your vehicle licensing tax. The urban renewal measure, I guess you're not being in support of 386 was shown by your creation of 388. And so that's the second way to vet a candidate. And the final one is where they stand on the rail vote. And that's pretty apparent, again, by Mayor Spinett's request, and you're ignoring him. So the easy way, I think, for the public out there listening to me and otherwise later in this race, to choose on what candidates they want to replace you is to ask them those three questions. I think we all know how every one of you feel about those. And that's sad. It's a sad commentary upon the commissioners that, again, not one of you would respect a mayor in this county enough to ask the question and at least not get a second, but not even to ask the question. I think it's going to come back to haunt each one of you. And as of today, I believe there'll be the petition will be approved and the signatures will start being gathered. They may or may not, because of a very long 2-week process to get this ballot title approved after being brought into question by a TriMet attorney. What a coincidence. They may or may not make this next ballot, but it'll be hanging around for you come November, and each of you will have to address that question. Thank you very much.
And the next card I have is Fred Nelligan.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to respond just a little bit in that I can assure that former Mayor Ludlow would appreciate that when a council or a body makes a decision, they make a decision. And unfortunately, the fact that the motion to put it to the vote that I made twice was not seconded, that's not a decision, unfortunately. At the same token, and with respect, is that, how often does one make a motion and get it denied or not get it seconded over and over and over repeatedly? So I think in respect, if there's no will, there's no will, and be that as it may, it's unfortunate that it isn't before the voters.
Fred Nelligan.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Fred Nelligan. I live on Concord Court in Oak Grove, and I'm here this morning to also talk to you about the Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail Line, and basically to give you guys an update on a meeting that we just had last Wednesday evening at the Oak Grove Community Council, where we had a panel of 6 people who were invited to talk about safety and security on the light rail system, and most particularly to address concerns within the community of both Milwaukee and Oak Grove on when the light rail starts. The panel, it was actually one of our more successful, I think, innovative meetings. We had about 80 or 90 people there. Commissioner Damon, we were happy to see, was there. And participated fully with a lot of discussions on the side with people. And the panel consisted of the Transit Commander Mike Krebs, Harry Supportive, the Executive Director for TriMet Safety and Security, Chief Bob Jordan from Milwaukee, and then we had 2 representatives from the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant Jeff Davis, and then Sergeant Lynn Schoenfeld, who is actually assigned to the Transit Police. The discussion centered on a lot of concerns that particularly people who are not in favor of light rail coming to Oak Grove and Milwaukee, and who are not in favor of improving and changing the character of McLaughlin Boulevard. A lot of people were very concerned about gang involvement, drugs coming into the community. There are 2 basic underlying messages I thought that were communicated throughout the meeting by these representatives. One, Sergeant Lynn Schoenfeld, who works the system every day. He's been with Clackamas County Sheriff's Office now, I believe, for 20 years. He is so flippin' enthusiastic about what he does for the county, for the transit police, and in catching bad people, so to speak. The other underlying message that came through loud and clear was that the police, law enforcement, basically, we are you and you are us, and that community protection and policing, it's up to everyone. It's a civic process, and it was a very, very engaging meeting that we had, and I thought there was a lot of very good respect from both sides, people pro light rail, people not for light rail. It was great. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just want to express, if Mr. Nelligan maybe stick around, I'd like to know if you do have identified anyone that is against the light rail and also against improvements on McLaughlin. I don't know of any, but if you know of someone who's against both of those, please, I'd like to speak with you at the end of the meeting.
The next card I have is Sandra Cosgrove.
Before I sit down, I want to tell you, I have been sitting at home watching the meetings. The left mic doesn't work half the time. So I'm sitting here.
Okay.
Work on that.
It cuts in and out, so you missed words.
We think it's fixed now.
Good morning, my name is Sandra Cosgrove, and I live in Steve's Mobile Home Park on Courtney Road in Milwaukee. I'm not going to talk about the TriMet light rail and our legal right to vote. You've already heard all that time and time again, but I want to say that I totally agree with what everybody says here in these chairs. But what I want to do here today is to kind of tell you who I am, where I live, and the people that are in my mobile home park, and what we're having to deal with as far as urban renewal is concerned. Okay. I'm on the next page. I'm nervous, excuse me. It says that, with urban renewal, the people who drew up the plans for that you're going to get or have already gotten, they took no consideration whatsoever. The people who live in these places that they want to eliminate, And in my particular park, they want to put a street down the middle of the property. That's after we're gone, of course. And build single-story or single-family places there. Okay, in my park, we have 78 units, or 78 spaces, and we're all elderly from the ages of 55 to 92. We're all living on our own without help. And most of us are on Social Security, just like me. We don't have money in the bank for relocation. Some of us don't have friends or family that can take us in or whatever. Me personally, if this happens, urban renewal comes in, they take away our mobile home park, I will be homeless, and I'm not kidding. This is a devastation to all of us. We are so afraid that this is going to happen. I started buying my house almost 2 years ago. It's going to be paid off in May. Now I find out I'm going to lose it. This is ridiculous. So what I'm asking you to do is when the urban renewal plans come to you, look them over. Don't just sign them as they are. Look to see that we are human beings. And don't take my home away from me. Thank you.
Commissioner
May I make
Bernard.
some comments?
Oh, okay.
First off, there is no urban renewal plan. I would love to come and talk to you about the maps and stuff, and I agree. Those maps were a vision. There is no plan to take your trailer park away, so please do not fear it. I'd love to come and talk to your group anytime. We can set up, I'll bring pizza, and I'd love to talk to your group. There is no
Good.
plan to take your trailer park away.
I would love to have all of you come to our mobile home park. There's several mobile home parks in a line that were put on that map.
I have
that,
friends who live there and would love to, come and talk to you. I'm sure we can I'll get you my business card. Charlotte and I already talked to a member, somebody who lives in your trailer park, about offering to attend and talk to
Okay.
them about the situation. That map was purely a vision. The county has no money to build those roads. Urban renewal is not being discussed in that area. So I'd love to have an opportunity to,
It's-
make you feel better.
It's not that I don't trust you, okay? But could I have that in writing, please?
It's on tape.
Yeah.
Because I need to go back. I'm kind of the
I'd
mobile home
like to
park
come.
activist. And I can go back and tell them, and I can show them, look, they say they're not going to mess with us, because everybody is just, like I said, we're just terrified.
Yeah.
This whole thing is just
And
scared us to
I
death.
appreciate how vulnerable you feel, and I was
Oh,
mayor of Wilsonville
Oh,
when the
yeah.
Thunderbird thing came down. And that was a case where the owner decided to sell and just left everyone with nowhere to go, and we had to scramble to try to get ordinances in place and protections and eventually build alternate housing. But that's when the park is sold the park owner decides to sell it.
Right. I've had that happen to me 5 years ago. I walked
Yes,
away
and
from a
that, and
$10,000
it
mobile home
leaves
because of it.
mobile home park
Yeah.
owners then feel very vulnerable and are vulnerable to those things happening.
Oh, yeah.
But if the government decided, because this was an issue as well in Wilsonville, if the government had decided to take part of the mobile home park for a overpass expansion, if ODOT had decided, they would have had to relocate all of those people and make sure that they are in at least as good or better living situation at a comparable price. The relocation standards for government, if government is responsible for dislocating you, they're very high. And part of the reason that we never proceeded with that is that it would have been very expensive to relocate all those people. And that's what you're hearing here. We don't have any money to do that because it wouldn't just be the cost of the improvement. We'd have to make sure that you were relocated in a satisfactory situation that was satisfactory to you. I mean, the standards for us displacing people, whether it's a house or a mobile home park, are pretty stringent, the laws that protect you from the government doing that. Now, if you're, as you know from your experience, a park owner can sell the park out from under you.
Yes, definitely.
And I don't think we still have the strong enough protections for you in that regard. But thank you for coming and
Yeah, because at the urban renewal meetings that we went to, they were threatening us with eminent domain. They were saying they didn't have to give us a penny, you know, and it was, I thought, well, what authority do they have?
No,
That's why I decided I better bring it here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Thank you
No,
so much for
there's
listening to me.
Nothing like that.
Yeah, thank you.
The next person I have is Les Poole.
You're hearing from more and more people. I think that's a good thing, and I'm looking forward to the time when someone runs with Paul's idea and the idea that I promoted off and on for a year and a half, and that's let's get the meetings later in the day. Let's get more people down here so you can hear and they can get a chance. It's something that needs to happen. Good news, unlimited minutes now. Unlimited minutes. Anybody that was here a couple of weeks ago will appreciate that because my cell bill was $121 over. Why was it $121 over? Because there's a lot of people calling me, and you know what they're calling me about. It looks like the petition's going to hit the streets for the light rail vote. Ex post facto or not, we've got an election coming. We've got an economy and a federal government that's starting to wonder about how much we're going to spend and what we're going to get with Milwaukee Light Rail. Had the mandate been followed 2 years ago to revisit the project and not bushwhack our way over the Kellogg Lake area and butcher the trolley trail to get up to Park Avenue, if that course hadn't been taken, so we could dump 300 cars there and end up spending $1.5 billion, 1.5 billion borrowed dollars, and taking 600 cars off the road. Right now, this thing is not a done deal in Clackamas County. That line may end at Lake Road someday. I'd like to see them build a streetcar down to Lake Road from Tacoma and just not bring the intrusive light rail in. It's too big, it's too imposing, it's a bad fit in Milwaukee. But we all know that. We also know that if you look back, we've been talking about this forever, folks. BCC Nix's vote on light rail, August of last year. That's where Mr. Savas asked you just to put it out for discussion. Put it out for discussion. And now here we are. Somehow in 3 minutes, I got to give you a 5-minute message, and I can't do it. One of the things that's really coming back to me over and over from people, and that is, how are we going to fund it if it does come? Because it's clear that if it doesn't cross Kellogg Lake, if the line is shortened, that the $25 million IGA goes away. You can hear that from Mr. McFarland on video. So it's a real gray situation, what's going to happen at Park Avenue and what's going to happen with the proposal to buy the Elks Lodge and evidently level it because it's right next to the proposed end of the line. It's a real mess, folks, and the good news I have is over the next few months, this will all be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you. The next card I have is Yvonne Lazarus.
Good morning. I'm Yvonne Lazarus. I live in Oak Grove. I'm here to speak about the vote. I wonder when I look at each one of you, what is going through your minds when you hear us over and over ask for the vote? That's something, I don't care what it's about. I don't care if it's about the library, urban renewal, light rail. We have a right to vote on it. That's what this is about. For me, I feel like my rights are being taken from me. And I don't want that. I never want that. I don't want that for my children, my grandchildren, or your children and grandchildren. Really and truly, that's about all I have to say. It really makes me wonder, because you could have stopped all of this very simply. Thank you.
Okay, and then the next card I have is Mac Woods and Sylvia.
As you know, she don't hear well at all, and she's here to represent some of her friends. Talk close, excuse me. She has a wait for, she's gonna read what her son helped her put together. Talk.
I'm Sylvia, and I live in rural Canby. I have lived in Clackamas County quite a while. Like most other senior citizens, we don't like to get involved with politics, but you are forcing us to take a stand against you. When I and my husband retired 26 years ago, he was still working. We paid lots of taxes, saved our money, so wouldn't have to burden other working people to take care of us in what you call a rest home. I bought my place in rural Canby in 1995 with tow homes on the property so I could have family or a caretaker close to me for my safety. Have you visited one of these care places? They have a bed and 4 walls to look at. Let me be the first to tell you, I have many friends that have been forced to go into one because of the many crazy rules we don't even know about until we get a citation from Dean Brown and the planning board. Many of us seniors are learning about what you call LCDC, and we are shocked to learn that Oregon is the only state in the United States that has LCDC. Do you not know this? We are more shocked to learn that all the rules they used to bully us around comes from you commissioners. Do you not know this? Do you not have a heart? You will discover what you don't know when you become a senior and can't pay your taxes. Mr. Wheeler, you asked me for proof about what they did to me. So you could look into my case. I told you that Dean Brown and his boss had all the records. Did you or any one of your commissioners look into it? Do you really care about the seniors? Or is it just about how you get our last few dollars before we die? I can't hear very well, but I'm not stupid, and we know how to vote. We are learning as we watch and listen to you on our computers. Thank God a few of us still living at home can turn up the volume to hear what you are doing to seniors and younger property owners. How can you be so uneducated? Some of you and LCDC has to go. It seems like you can still hear us, but you don't listen. I can promise you we will not have to listen to you after we vote. Thank you.
Okay?
Well, I was going to say something entirely different until I heard a lot of speakers here today. 407 years ago, I'm Macwoods, by the way, 407 years ago, our forefathers came forth on this continent to give us the Constitution. I ain't talking about 1620 November when the Pilgrims landed. I'm talking about from the Constitution. Do you not understand what it means? I'm not nailing you down, Mr. Jim. I respect that, but read it, hear it, understand it. I have a good friend that'll help you if you need help. Aside from that, I don't want to get onto that subject. I want to talk about why I'm here today. We understand the Constitution. We understand the preamble of the United States. Every one of you here today, I'm totally off my notes what I was going to say, so bear with me. I'm thinking about the Constitution, the county and state. Clackamas County is in this state, for which it stands, our state, our county, and that includes Clackamas County, for the freedom it stands on, our Constitution, our Pledge of Allegiance that you all do here. That's the freedom, that's what freedom's all about. And every one of you took an oath when you were sworn in to represent Clackamas County and all the people living in Clackamas County. I truly hope you were truthful about your oath when you were sworn in to represent the public, the voters, in this county. What is the qualifications to be a county commissioner, for goodness sakes? I'd like to know. I'm wondering. I'm going to skip on through things like, you got me totally off course by hearing your answers, hearing the questions. I really think you need to retune your way of thinking. Many public taxpayers in our county are starting to question 3 or 4 of you as they listen to you and hear your comments on your website. They're watching you very close. All they're asking from you is to be honest, truthful, and loyal to the public in Clackamas County. Is that too much to ask of you in return for what they're paying you for? It's all about money, I think. If you truly don't understand, could you simply, when you go to the grocery store or something like that, ask a total stranger what they think of you? I'm talking about so you can learn how the voters feel about you personally, not putting anybody down. I could be up there in your same seat. I'd probably resign if I was in one of those seats right now. You just might be shocked to know, really truly know what people feel in their heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Administrators.
Yeah, just to clarify, we did receive a letter from Sylvia, and I apologize, I forget her last name. It goes back to quite some years ago, but we have not lost sight of that. We're still working on it. We're researching it. We will respond. I have regular meetings with that department director, and it's on my list every week. So it's still a work in progress, but we have not forgotten it.
Okay.
And we do thank you for that, Mr. Wheeler. We certainly appreciate it. We'd like to see you do the same thing. Be concerned. I went and bought a copy of that for her. $50. The same thing down at the county courthouse only costs $10. It's all about money. Thank you for getting involved, Mr. Wheeler.
Okay. With that, we will move on to the consent agenda. And I will note that consent agenda item 8.3 under Health, Housing, and Human Services has been removed from the agenda for further staff review. So I will ask the county administrator to read the remaining consent agenda by title only.
Thank you. Yes, it's
Madam
my
Chair.
turn. Oh,
Yeah. Just want to direct a question to Mr. Wheeler before I decide what to do here or not. Did you look into number 1?
yeah, we do not have an answer to the question you requested.
Okay. Is there any urgency to do it today?
I think we can gracefully withdraw this and put it back when we can get that answer.
Okay.
And that's on A1 we're talking about.
I'm going to try and just go through the process as I understand it. I'd like to remove item 1 from the consent agenda.
Yeah, I think we can do that. The way to do that would be in the motion. The motion to approve the consent agenda with an amendment, but he needs to read them first, and then you can And then you can move to approve the consent agenda with, or remove that item from the consent agenda and move forward, or whatever you want to do it. at
And
that
I'm
point.
just stating that there won't be an objection from us to do that.
So I would say read that, since
Will.
it
Yeah, it was.
wasn't here, read, or read all of them, so we know which one, and then we'll make a note that A1 and A3 have been amended off.
Exactly. So here we go. The consent agenda, Section A, Health, Housing, and Human Services. Number 1, approval of an amendment to the agreement with American Medical Response Northwest, Inc. for a mileage rate increase. Number 2, approval of personal services agreement to provide physicians on a locum tenens basis with the Martin Fletcher locums. Number 3 is approval of a personal services agreement to provide physicians on a locum tenens basis with Kelly Services. Number 4, approval of a professional, technical, and consultant service contract with Community Counseling Solutions, Inc. to provide warm line services. Section B, elected officials. Number 1, approval of previous business meeting minutes. Number 4, Roman numeral 4, Water Environment Services. Number 1, approval to accept private property donations and transfer of ownership to Clackamas County Service District Number 1. Number 2, approval of a joint funding agreement between Clackamas County Service District Number 1, Surface Water Management Agency of Clackamas County, and the U.S. Geological Survey for the stream flow measuring work. Number 3, approval of a joint funding agreement between the Surface Water Management Agency of Clackamas County and the U.S. Geological Survey for Tualatin River monitoring. That completes the consent agenda.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda, and also, and with that, with the amendment to remove item 1 and item 3.
Is there a second?
Well, I'd like to know why.
Well, why don't you
I will second
second it for the
for a
purpose of
discussion.
Okay. Item 3 was removed by staff. I had some questions on item 1, and Mr. Wheeler had not. We had a constituent speak to us in December on this issue, and I assumed that follow-up was done based on his questions regarding this.
Regarding 3 or 1?
1.
1.
And
I can't confirm that it was or was not done, so there's no harm in
So I
waiting a
checked
week.
before the meeting started, and Mr. Wheeler let me know that they had not followed up and that it was not urgent, so it could come back and the questions could be answered by next week.
So this is new information after our approval at the study session in December?
It's after the information of approval, but it's also following that same meeting, we had a constituent raise a question that I assume staff rectified or answered. And I was looking for that answer, and they had not done that, the follow-up.
Commissioner Bernard.
So I'm not going to support the vote or this amendment to remove item number 1. We discussed it December 20th. One person had some issues with why we would want to give AMR a gas mileage increase, and it hadn't been done in many years. I cannot, everybody supported it, the fire districts, all fire districts, the boards that we have reviewing this issue all supported it, as did H3S. And we discussed it and all supported it at the December 20th meeting. So I won't be voting in favor of this. I think it should be included in this consent agenda, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't.
And let me ask staff, what's the impact of removing this and putting it off till next week? If there
Well,
are
it would-
questions.
It would delay the increase in the mileage reimbursement that amount of time, assuming it's then approved.
So I mean, it has an
1 week.
actual monetary impact.
Well, yeah, I was just asking for the 7 days unless staff's prepared to discuss it after we approve the consent agenda, which is just another procedural thing. If the staff's here to present and explain that, that's great, but from a consent agenda standpoint and procedure and protocols, I assume that if you want a dialogue about the item, you remove the consent agenda.
For discussion. We could remove it for discussion. I'd be more than happy to support that.
Can you speak up, please? We can't hear.
I'd be more than happy to support an amendment to the consent agenda, removing it for discussion.
From a parliamentary procedure standpoint, it's the same thing. Because it's not a consent item, and then you remove it, then you discuss it, and if you decide to postpone it a week, you do. If you don't, then you approve it.
Well, I don't think we need to postpone it for a
We
week.
can
have
discuss it now.
staff out here right now, so we could discuss it right now.
That's the purpose of consent agenda, is what's consented, and then for dialogue, what is not, which
Right.
is separate.
Okay, then I'm
And
gonna vote for it.
usually, in my experience, if it's moved off the consent agenda, it's moved on to a discussion item.
Correct.
On
So,
the same agenda.
on the same agenda. So,
So if there
If
was
we're going
a
to-
second, so we need to vote.
yeah, I mean, so this is what can happen, or tell me, is we could go ahead and approve the consent agenda with these two items removed, and then someone can move to bring it up for discussion.
Okay?
And we can proceed to discuss it, I presume. So the motion on the floor is to approve the consent agenda, but for items number 1 and number 3, A1 and A3. And
You mean A1, A3 removed?
yes, A1 and A3 removed from the consent agenda. So we're approving everything but those two. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 That-
That passes 4-0. And
That-
then if you would like to make a motion about the.
Well,
we need
if
a
I may,
second on that.
I'll just ask, is staff prepared to respond to the person's questions that were here? Do they have those questions, and are they responded to?
I see Cindy
I'll-
nodding her head.
I'll get to that in just a second. First, we didn't catch the second on the removal.
It was.
It was Jamie.
Okay,
Amy?
good. So as regards to that question, let's find out, because I don't know yet.
So let's.
So I need to make
See
a
them nodding
motion.
yes, so let's bring
He's
Cindy
gonna
Becker
make
and
a
Richard
motion.
Swift up.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
I move
Commissioner
that
Bernard.
we remove, well, it has been removed, that item number 1 to discussions, to the discussion items. I move that we discuss it on today's agenda.
And I second that.
Been moved by Commissioner Bernard and seconded by Commissioner Damon that we move item A1 to discussion for today. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay?
Aye.
Aye. And that passes 4-0. So, Mr. Administrator,
Well,
if you could bring forward whatever staff are.
Are we going to vote on the consent calendar? with
We
the-
did
oh,
already.
We did that, okay, good. Let me invite Richard Swift and Cindy Becker up, and we'll discuss A1.
Okay.
Please join us.
Pardon?
At the end of it.
Yeah, come on up, and since we have some questions about this item, to know if we can proceed with it at this meeting or not.
Okay, for the record, Cindy Becker, Health, Housing, Human Services. And it's our understanding that the questions emanated from a meeting in December. And they were around the fuel increase, which is really what we were asking about. And the increase that we had talked about and had recommended is about a 31% increase compared to the increase in fuel over time has been actually more than double that. So I don't know, Commissioner, if there were other questions than that, but we understand that he made a comment about it. I think Commissioner Bernard, you actually responded at the meeting. So if there are other questions beyond that, we don't know what they are.
And that's exactly why I was asking to have it removed for a week, because the questions somehow got lost that were raised from the constituent that spoke here at that meeting. And that was my purpose of just really asking for the, because I didn't think staff was ready. I think the administrator's response was, we're not ready. And so if they don't have those questions identified of what they were,
We would have to dig the record out and.
Yeah, Commissioner, it's our understanding it was just this one comment. There was not a list of questions, so.
I believe the comment, I mean, I think it was Les who made the comment, wondering why we would give an increase to AMR why we would give an increase. That was the question. I mean, it's kind of vague. We did address that question. Prices of gas have gone up. I don't know what else we would say. AMR has been providing outstanding service to the county, and I don't think that since one person brought up the question of why we would give an increase to AMR, it really means that we should reconsider this increase. So I don't know what else to say, except I'd be happy to make a motion.
Well, Commissioner Savas, are there other questions that you're aware of? Because it
I-
sounds like staff is interested to know too.
I'll just, when people come up and they ask questions under public comment, and we respond that we'll get back to them, and I sit up here and rely that we will. And then upon that, it becomes, for example, on this one, now is the time to approve this particular one. I wanted to follow up on what the responses were, being responsible to the people who have testified. And if there's a breakdown in this particular circumstance, and there is, and then I can at least know that I've done my due diligence when I vote, that I have looked into what those concerns were. So, we made a bigger deal out of this than it should be. I was just simply asking for giving staff the opportunity to find out what that was, respond back, and we'd be, just going through the motions 7 days from now.
Yeah. But it has a 7-day financial impact. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, yeah, and 7 days or however long it, till you address it.
Till you do address it, yeah. And I would say, yes, we want to be responsive to questions that we receive, but but not at the, and we would continue to follow up, but we have to make decisions in a timely manner with regards to a lot of things on the consent agenda, which are, that need to be, that are time sensitive, and we need to address the issues that have come up for us. And if the question was why would we be giving them an increase, if that's the general nature of it, then we're the ones who need to be comfortable with there's a good reason to give that increase. That's the that's the basic question here. Is it reasonable for us to give AMR an increase for mileage? And we're hearing from staff. Was there something else you wanted to add on this?
Richard Swift with HCS. No, the study materials on the 20th, spoke to the mileage increases, gave comparisons, talked about, fuel. And we've been paying very close attention to this, so we were not aware that a question surfaced. And the only thing that we can find at this point in terms of a very, very quick examination of the 20th was it was about fuel. Mm-hmm. And the study materials speak to that. And so that was why we were bringing forward this request for increase for rates for AMR.
Mm-hmm.
So was this calculated on market price? I mean, I guess I'll have to just kind of try to recall some of the questions. So was the rate increase, it's an even $4 here, it looks like, it appears to be. Mm-hmm. So is that calculated on a market price, or is it an arbitrary number?
A market price for fuel?
Correct.
Yes. And they're tracking fuel prices across time in terms of how they are affecting AMR's bottom line.
Okay, and the total monetary impact or the differential over a year's time with the $4 difference amounts to how many dollars?
Well, Well, in the study materials, it says, if approved, this change is projected to increase AMR's revenue by approximately $68,000 annually.
Okay, and that cost is paid by?
Well, it's against AMR's billables in terms of their services to, so it could be paid by private insurance, it could be paid by Medicare, it could be paid by Medicaid.
Okay, but it's not paid out of the county general fund?
No, it is not.
Right, and it's paid, and that Medicare, Medicaid is federal dollars?
That is correct.
Okay,
Or it's paid by the individuals.
Mhm.
They don't have insurance.
right.
Yes.
And I think those were some of the concern, or questions that were, and it's not so much that, and I'm trying to recall as much of it as possible from what the gentleman spoke about, but that's all I had. And I don't know, again, if all those questions were answered, but from a procedure standpoint, if there ought to be some kind of a mechanism where, when these people speak, and if there's going to be a following agenda item related to that, we ought to have those responses in advance.
So Commissioner Chavez, I can appreciate that. I think that that's,
Please speak up.
oh, sorry, Mac. I can appreciate, I know you want to hear. I can appreciate your just making sure that we're looping back, and I think that that's an important thing. On this particular issue, I feel like, we had a robust conversation about this in December. The board approved this, county council has reviewed it, there are no general fund dollars involved. If anything, I mean, it's really a calculator that we're looking at that increases the rate of calculation. We have AMR here, and I'm concerned about putting it off another week and costing our contractor more time, our staff more time, when we have made this decision. So I'm ready to support this increase.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the amendment to the agreement with American Medical Response Northwest, Inc. for emergency ambulance service fuel increase.
And I second.
Been moved by Commissioner Bernard and seconded by Commissioner Damon that we approve this amendment to the agreement with American Medical Response. Is there further discussion? Commissioner Bernard.
I guess I just need to make a comment. Normally, discussion items, procedurally wise, if you read the packet, you have concerns, you ask that they be pulled, and that was done with item 3. Item 1, should there have been some concern, I would have suggested outside this process that the commissioner request that item be pulled for discussion, and then we wouldn't be in this awkward situation. But, I mean, this was a discussion item in December. One person commented on it, and it AMR, and we've had many letters of support. I can't imagine why we would delay this for 7 days when it has financial impact on our contract ambulance supplier.
Commissioner Bernard, I appreciate that. I didn't ask to delay anything, and I did do exactly what you suggested. I asked to have it pulled from the consent agenda, and actually, I actually chose an easier path, and that was by discussing it prior to this meeting. And the administrator indicated there was nothing was time sensitive. There would be no harm in waiting 7 days, and the questions would be answered. So I chose the easiest path, and the administrator in kind said the same thing at the very beginning part of this discussion, and now we're here. So I'm following the procedure just as you described. So I'm confused as to your confusion.
I described it as pulling the item prior to the meeting, which none of us would have had an issue with, putting it in discussion. I mean,
well, that's exactly how item 3 got done.
Item 3 was just pulled. That's
pulled.
what I'm suggesting.
That's what I did. That's what I attempted to do.
Anyway.
This is.
We're in the middle of a vote.
Yes, we're in the middle of a vote.
We have a motion and a second.
Motion and a second to approve this amendment. Any other comment on this, not on our procedures, but on this topic, this item? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 4-0. And,
Did you say that?
yeah, you did. I thought I heard all 4. And, and with that, we will move on to, thank you very much. We'll move on to Commissioner Communication. Commissioner Damon, how about there?
Sure, I'll start. So first, I just want to address, is the woman who was, thank you, Mac. Oh, there you are, right in the front row. The woman from the mobile home park along Milwaukee. And also Sylvia, the concerns that you raised. It is, I really appreciate you coming forward and sharing with us your concerns, and all of you, in fact. I think you take time out of your day to come in and speak from the heart, and you hope that it's going to land somewhere up here and that we're going to do something about it. I want to convey to you how much I appreciate you taking that time. We have excellent staff to follow up and work with you. Your concerns are not lost. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, the woman from the mobile home park. Sandra. So Sandra, I particularly want to address your concerns because I've, in my role as a public policy mediator, I've worked a lot on these kinds of planning processes where there are maps and lines on the map and visions and ideas and aspirations that a community might have, but that also creates a lot of anxiety for the people that live there because there's uncertainty about when are these things going to be put in place and what does it mean for you and what is your role in that future that other people are trying to create when you don't necessarily see that for yourself. And so I want to say I really understand that and respect that. And more often than not, these kinds of planning processes are a way to put down really what might be possible. And so much of what's possible is dependent on our ability as government to fund the infrastructure, your ability as a public to support those dreams and aspirations, and the private sector's ability to invest in those areas. And all those things take a really long time. I've talked about Damascus a number of times, so Damascus incorporated in 2004, and they've been struggling since then to try to really get their minds around what kind of a community they would like to be. And Dee Westcott, the former mayor there who passed away a couple of years ago, very dear man, lived there all his life, and he used to talk with people about the same anxiety. And he used to say, we're fighting about trying to retain a quality of life and a way of life that's really important to us, and that's good. It's important to do. But the reality is that things really aren't going to change for 20 years or more, in part because of how much it costs to put in the infrastructure and the importance of building the support of the public to be able to support change of that way. So it isn't to say that these things on the map will never happen for those who have a dream and would like to see those things happen. But it is to say that if you see something on a map, most likely it isn't going to happen anytime soon because of how long it takes to put these things in place. And I was going to say, and I know that that's probably a little comfort, easier if they just said, okay, tomorrow, yeah. Because then we have something to deal with. Having this held over our heads for what? It creates uncertainty. I understand that. And I guess, if you were to look back 20 years, or if you were to look back 5 years or 10 years and think of how slowly things have really changed. If you look back 20 years, you can start to see that things have changed quite a bit, or 30 years. So it really takes decades in order to shift things.
Yeah, we
why don't we follow up? Let's have a conversation.
Why don't you have a
because I don't want
conversation
this
later.
to turn into a big conversation. But I did want to address that. So my only other commissioner communication is my community profile of this week are the villages of Mount Hood. I was up, if you haven't been up there, there are a number of small businesses, lovely, it's a lovely collection of communities on your way up to the mountain. I think a lot of times people are in a hurry to get to skiing or get to recreation on the mountain or their destination up on the mountain and forget to stop along the way. There's a couple places I like to stop. The Weiss Bookstore, it's a little off the highway in a shopping center there, and it's really wonderful. My favorite place for breakfast is the Barlow Trail Roadhouse. I encourage you to stop there. And the community volunteers that I like to recognize are the Hoodland Women's Club. I was up at their crab feed last Saturday. There were several hundred people there. They're actively raising money for a senior center, community center, to serve that community that's aging. They're doing yeoman's work, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I really appreciate the work that they're doing. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Bernard.
Well, this month is the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage in Oregon. It took 50 years for women in Oregon to have the right to vote, and it was thanks to the governor at that time, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, that women did actually have finally get the right to vote in Oregon. Today is the first meeting of Clackamas County Veterans Committee. The committee's goals, I guess the committee was established as an advisory committee, and it was created to assist and advise veteran service officers and Board of Commissioners on matters upon which veteran service officers and board requests counsel, including to work with veteran service officer to ensure that the needs of the veterans and their dependents and survivors who reside in Clackamas County are recognized and addressed in a timely and effective manner, and to review current issues affecting veterans and their dependents and survivors who reside in this county, and to make recommendations related to those issues, and to review current operations of the Office of Veteran Service Officers, to make recommendations concerning the operation of any part of the office, and to make recommendations for the establishment or revision of a program and entitlements for veterans, and finally, to make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on amendments to the charter, and also to participate in budgeting process to make sure that we're funding our Veterans Department to an adequate level to address the concerns of veterans coming home. There are 30,000 of them coming home in Oregon, and we need to make sure that they come home and get the services that they deserve. Finally, I just got back from Atlanta. I was there for a public safety and justice conference last week. That's why I was not in attendance for the business meeting. And one thing I noted, and I was sitting there riding in what they call MARTA, which is their underground light rail. A lot of it's underground, a lot of it's above ground. But I was thinking, boy, it's too bad we didn't do this 100 years ago like many people have. Boston, for example, many places in Europe where they dug those tunnels many years ago for a lot less money than today. And prior to that, I had been in Salt Lake City where they literally built the light rail out to nothing, literally nothing. And on the end, a huge development started, probably about the same time as Villebois did, that has literally changed that whole area. And it's amazing that people in Boston and Atlanta and in Europe had the vision to think out 20, 50, 100 years to make sure that there was adequate transportation opportunities for people. And I think that's what we're doing today with light rail. It's not about today, it's about the future. And the future is less funding for transportation, for roads, and a lot more people, a lot more cars. So I think that light rail addresses many of the future issues that will confront future citizens of Clackamas County. But today, it's important that we try to address the issues that impact people today, and that is to make sure that we address the crime problem. And the other is that we have the least impact we have on citizens that live there. One thing I would love to see is, a discussion in Clackamas County specifically how we could address those crime problems. One of the things I think that would be very helpful, and TriMet is right now investing more money to make sure that people riding light rail actually paid for a ticket. But most of the systems I've been in are closed systems. That means you can't go onto the light rail unless you pass through a gate and it reads your card, and then you know they paid. And at each of those stations, there's security that makes sure people aren't jumping the rails. And I'd love to see TriMet in the future, if not sooner, look at a closed system to make sure that, and I know that will reduce the crime incidents. It does cost money, and sometime I hope that the voters in the metro region and Clackamas consider do we want to spend more money on a closed system? Because years ago, that was a decision to be an open system. And while you know, I think it opens up opportunities, it also creates some issues that I think could be addressed by closing the system. Just so people know, they did actually pass an ordinance that didn't allow people on the platform unless they got their tickets, but they can still get on the train unless somebody checks them. And I heard this morning that a lot of tickets have been issued, and they're fairly expensive, over $100 if you're riding it without a ticket. So I'd also love to come and talk to your trailer park. I've had employees living there, and I have a friend that lives there. It is of concern to us, and I always hate sometimes when people come in and they present visions and ideas that put fear in people when they ought to just focus on what can be done in the future or what will be done in the near future. And so I look forward to coming and visiting you guys. Like I said, I'll bring pizza. Thank you.
Mr. Savas.
That's a lot to respond to, so I'll be as brief as I can. I will say that law enforcement for quite some time has asked for a closed system, and even our sheriffs and sheriff's officers have asked that we make it a closed system. So I think leadership is acting, and had we acted a long time ago, we'd have a closed system today. But you know, the saying is that you know, some people say put your money where your mouth is, or whatever. So I think it's a matter of if we're to advocate for that, we need to advocate for that. If we really care about safety, we want a closed system, we should be doing it. We shouldn't be just talking about it. This is an age-old, I won't say age-old, but as long as I can remember, that law enforcement's been asking in this region for a closed system, and we just keep on ignoring that. So that's one issue. Back to Sandra Cosgrove's comments regarding, you know, what she saw on the map. I mean, I would be concerned if it's part of the plan, and I think that has been the issue. It's one thing to say that we're never going to do that, or that's going to be, you know, a year or two, you know, way out there in the future. And I think, Commissioner Bernard, you made a pretty strong statement one time in response to some of the contents in those plans. That'll never happen. And I would advocate that's a lot of the reason that the plans, basically at the last open houses for each of those, were really, for the most part, you know, by the voting, the electronic voting, were rejected. And I think if that's going to be problematic, we need to take out the things that people don't accept. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, when those two plans were presented, that was the direction we gave staff, was to maybe get everyone together and take some of that energy and take the things that everyone agrees upon and move that forward. And I'm hoping we can do that so that people out there in the trailer park and the community will be at rest. And that same thing goes with any of those plans and how we operate. I think we just need to actually put things in writing. I remember, and I took to heart what TriMet said, and I realized that Commissioner Damon, before she was a commissioner in 2007, when they had the one and only meeting in 2007 in Oak Grove, when they presented that the potential extension or the alternate from going from Milwaukee to Oak Grove would never happen. It just wouldn't happen. And it wasn't likely to happen because there was no funding. And then suddenly it did happen. And there was one meeting to announce that it happened. And there was no process. And that only lasted just, maybe a year or two of that alternative being studied, where it became real. And yet people were somehow given a false sense of security that, for various reasons explained by staff. And then at that meeting, several people and TriMet staff people said, we're not going to bring light rail to any community that doesn't want it. And we haven't established that the community there has wanted it yet. And I think people remember that. And so I think that's as verbal of a contract. And I think I remember someone saying, could you please put that in writing? And the response was, well, we don't know who you are. Back in 2007 at that meeting, we don't know who you are. We can't sign it because you're not a city. So we can't make that agreement. But I still think we have an obligation to do that. We have an obligation to find out if that's what the community wanted, and that's what people are asking for. So going back to really what I want to speak to today, We had our fourth Commissioner Roundtable meeting last night, and the dominant discussion last night was barking dogs. So I just got a list of the meetings, probably the top issues coming out of these meetings so far that we were considering going to a roundtable type discussion, a one-issue discussion out in the community or communities, and going out with those topics. But I'll just say what the top four are, and I verified this with Gary Schmidt. Dog barking, light rail, county budgets, and access to the commissioners. I think someone spoke to that, getting access or reasonable access to the commissioners. And I think by doing the roundtables on the first Wednesday at 5:30 here at the county is one good step towards that. So I'd like, and Mary's going to flash on the screen our contact information. I would like anyone who has, if they think any one of those have a higher ranking, maybe to contact us, whether they think it's, again, whether it's light rail or barking dogs or county budgets or access to the commissioners, and rank how you, let us know. Send me an email, send any of the commissioners an email saying, you know, we think you ought to be focusing on this, and we'll try and get out there in the community with a town hall type program for you. At least I will make that commitment myself. See, what else do I have here? I believe that's all I have, other than the announcement that the next meeting will be March 7th, is the next meeting of the Commissioner Roundtable at DSB. And she'll be flashed on the screen momentarily. There it is. March 7th, 5:30. It usually goes from 5:30 to 6:45, 7 o'clock. There's about an hour to an hour and 20, 30 minutes or so to chat with us. So thanks for everyone that's participated so far.
I would just remind people that March 7th, a number of the commissioners will be in Washington, D.C. So, so the we might be you.
I'll be there.
I'll be there as well.
Can I ask, how many people were at the meeting last night, Paul?
It was a smaller showing. I don't know why, but we've had a pretty good number ramping up, as you witnessed from the last time. But we only had 3 people there last night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had our transportation system plan meeting out in Eagle Creek last night. It was well attended, so that's why I wasn't there, but I was curious.
Yeah, we had 8 the first meeting. We had about, I think, 15 to 16 the second. I think, or actually probably more than that. I think, and anyhow, the last 2 prior to this one, the one last night, we've had anywhere from probably 17 to 20 people attend.
Thanks.
Okay. Speaking of town hall meetings, that I expect to be well attended well attended. This Saturday, 9 to noon, is the third of the Borland Stafford meetings. And we usually have about 100 people at those, or upwards above that. This particular meeting is at Athey Creek Middle School on Borland Road, and it is to discuss transportation issues relative to Borland and Stafford. And the presenters in this case will be elected officials from each of the 3 neighboring cities. So the mayor of Lake Oswego will be there to address Lake Oswego's transportation concerns. The mayor of West Lynn will be there to address West Lynn's transportation concerns, and a city councilor, Councilor Monique Beichman will be there for the city of Tualatin because their mayor is unable to attend. But they have been very eager to take part in this because each of those 3 cities is impacted by Stafford Borland in unique ways, and traffic has always been a big concern of theirs. So it will be good to hear their perspectives from the 3 cities. Then we will have 2 other perspectives presented. One will be from a representative from ODOT to speak to the issues relative to I-5 and, I-205, and by extension, probably I-5, because Stafford is so close to the junction of I-5 and I-205. So someone will be there from ODOT, and then we will have someone to address the regional transportation system plan and how the whole thing works with the Portland metropolitan region, what the issues are relative to Stafford, and perhaps other expansion areas as well. It's scheduled to go from 9 to noon, as I said, and the public is certainly welcome. It is hosted jointly by the Stafford Hamlet and Clackamas County, and hope to see you there if you are at all interested in this important part of Clackamas County. With that, I don't think I have anything else except to say that unfortunately this is a sunny day, and that doesn't bode well for Groundhog Day. So but it's supposed to be sunny most of the rest of the week. I hear that the skiing is great, so if you are a skier, head to Mount Hood and have a good time. Groundhog, forget about the groundhog. Happy Groundhog Day. We are adjourned.